The dark truth about Ashton Kutcher and his disturbing behavior in past relationships revealed Ashton Kutcher, the charming actor who makes people laugh, the social media star who seems so friendly and approachable. But what if I told you there's a side of him that almost no one sees? Behind the smiles and the pranks, there are stories from his past relationships that paint a very different picture. A side that is complex, unsettling, and hidden from the public eye. Today, we're diving into a fictional story, a what-if scenario that explores the patterns of behavior that some people close to him might have noticed. It's not real, but it's crafted to feel believable, almost like it could be true. You'll see how charm and charisma can sometimes mask disturbing patterns, and how easily people can overlook things when they only see the surface. This is just the beginning, a glimpse into a side of him that most fans never knew existed. As we move forward, you'll discover how small signs can add up into a bigger, darker story. It's a reminder that sometimes appearances can be very deceiving, and the truth can be stranger than we expect. On the surface, Ashton Kutcher is exactly what the world sees: a successful actor, a tech investor, and a person with a magnetic personality. He's known for his playful sense of humor, pranks that go viral online, and a public image that makes him seem approachable, fun, and even perfect. Most people only see the charm, the laughter, and the generosity, and that's exactly what makes him so captivating. But behind that public image, in the quieter corners of his life, there's a different story, one that rarely reaches the public eye. In our fictional tale, we explore how his relationships sometimes revealed behaviors that didn't match his on-screen persona. There were moments when charm turned into manipulation, laughter became control, and what seemed like playful teasing hid subtle patterns of emotional games. Those closest to him noticed small signs at first: missed commitments, controlling tendencies, or sudden bursts of jealousy. But they were easy to dismiss because of the image he projected. This story isn't about pointing fingers or claiming truth. It's about exploring a possible hidden side of someone who the world thought they fully understood. By imagining these scenarios, we can understand how even the most charming individuals can have complex and darker aspects that only appear behind closed doors. And in this fictional journey, those hidden sides start to reveal themselves in ways that are both surprising and unsettling. In the early days of his relationships, the charm was almost blinding. Partners often described him as attentive, funny, and deeply caring, someone who seemed to listen and make them feel special. But beneath that initial sweetness, subtle red flags began to emerge. In our fictional story, these early warning signs were small but meaningful: an unusual need to know every detail of his partner's day, questions that felt like concern but bordered on control, and an expectation of constant attention that left the other person feeling drained. At first, these behaviors were easy to ignore. After all, it's common in new relationships to want to spend a lot of time together, or to check in often. But as time went on, the patterns became more noticeable. Simple disagreements would sometimes lead to exaggerated reactions or emotional withdrawal, leaving his partners second-guessing themselves. Friends noticed the tension too, how someone so outwardly charismatic can make the people closest to him feel uneasy, unsure, or overly cautious. What makes these early signs so compelling in our fictional tale is the contrast between the public and private personas. On the outside, he was the perfect partner, full of humor and charm. But in private, the behaviors hinted at deeper patterns of control, manipulation, and emotional games. These small red flags were the first pieces of a larger puzzle, hinting at a darker side that the public rarely, if ever, saw. And though they were subtle at first, in hindsight, they were impossible to ignore, setting the stage for more dramatic events in later relationships. As the relationships continued, the subtle red flags evolved into a clear and troubling pattern. In our fictional story, what started as small controlling behaviors gradually became more pronounced and harder to ignore. Partners began noticing a recurring cycle. Moments of charm and affection would suddenly flip into coldness or manipulation, leaving them confused and emotionally exhausted. Casual remarks turned into criticism, playful teasing into emotional games, and moments of jealousy became controlling actions disguised as concern. These behaviors weren't always obvious to outsiders. Friends and family often saw the charismatic, loving side he showed publicly, which made it difficult to recognize the distress his partners were quietly experiencing. In our story, the contrast between his public persona and private actions created a tension that was almost invisible to the outside world, yet painfully real for those involved. Some partners described feeling like they were constantly walking on eggshells, trying to predict his moods or avoid triggering an outburst. The escalation reached a point where the patterns could no longer be ignored. Emotional manipulation became more frequent, with fabricated stories or exaggerated situations used to test loyalty and trust. Partners who once felt special began to feel trapped, questioning their own judgment and sanity. In this fictional tale, the charm that initially attracted people became a tool for control, a mask that hid a series of disturbing behaviors. By now, the story shows a clear trajectory. What began as subtle warning signs has transformed into a pattern that defines the relationships themselves, setting the stage for the dramatic turning points to come. The turning point comes when the pattern of disturbing behavior can no longer be hidden. After months of emotional highs and lows, one partner, let's call her Emma, starts noticing something she can no longer ignore. The small signs she once dismissed as quirks now form a clear and troubling picture. She discovers, through subtle clues and private moments, that the charming, playful man she thought she knew is capable of manipulation that leaves deep emotional scars. Text messages that seemed innocent at first are revealed to be carefully crafted attempts to control her thoughts and decisions. Private conversations that he claimed were jokes were actually veiled criticisms, testing her loyalty and self-confidence. The fictional drama intensifies when Emma confronts him about his behavior. Instead of apologizing or explaining, he reacts with a mix of charm and gaslighting, making her doubt her own perception. "You're overthinking," he says. "I just care about you too much." But in reality, this care is twisted into a tool to maintain control. The story shows how easy it is for someone to confuse love and manipulation when they are wrapped in charisma and public admiration. This turning point is critical because it reveals the full scale of the fictional dark side. What started as small, almost unnoticeable actions has escalated into a pattern that defines the relationship itself. Emotional exhaustion, constant doubt, and fear of displeasing him dominate the partner's life. Friends who once admired him begin to notice the strain on those closest to him, and whispers of concern start to grow louder. In this moment, the story emphasizes a key point. The most dangerous behavior is often invisible to the outside world, hidden behind charm, fame, and a public image of perfection. By the end of this segment, the audience feels the weight of the fictional truth, the tension between who someone appears to be and who they really are in private. The turning point is not just a revelation for the partner, it's a wake-up call for anyone watching. It sets the stage for reflection, analysis, and understanding the bigger picture of why such behaviors go unnoticed for so long, leading directly into the next part of our story. After seeing the turning point unfold, it's time to step back and reflect on what this fictional story reveals. One of the most striking aspects is how easy it is for such behavior to go unnoticed. Outwardly, the person is charming, successful, and loved by the public, someone everyone admires. But behind the scenes, those closest to him experience something entirely different. Our story shows that charisma and fame can be powerful shields, making it almost impossible for outsiders to recognize emotional manipulation or subtle control. In the story, the patterns of behavior, constant testing of loyalty, emotional games, and hidden criticisms were not random. They followed a consistent and deliberate rhythm that only someone intimately involved could perceive. Friends and family might notice small signs like tension or mood swings, but the public sees only the carefully curated persona. This contrast between public image and private behavior creates a powerful tension in the story and makes the fictional narrative feel real and believable. Another important reflection is about awareness. Partners in the story often second-guess themselves, wondering if they were overreacting or imagining things. This highlights a common theme. Manipulative behavior is rarely obvious, especially when mixed with charm and affection. In this fictional account, the audience sees how easy it is to confuse love, care, and attention with subtle control. The story encourages viewers to think critically about appearances, trust their instincts, and recognize that even the most outwardly perfect relationships may hide complexities that only time and observation can reveal. Ultimately, this reflection segment bridges the intense drama of the turning point with the final conclusion, allowing the audience to understand the bigger picture and consider the implications without breaking the professional and believable tone of the story. As our fictional story comes to a close, one clear truth emerges. Appearances can be deceiving. What the world sees, the laughter, charm, and success, can be very different from what exists behind closed doors. In this tale, the patterns of manipulation and emotional games may have been subtle at first, but over time, they reveal a side of a person that is rarely noticed until it is too late. The story reminds us that even those who seem perfect, who make us laugh and admire them publicly, can have hidden complexities and darker aspects in their personal lives. The fictional narrative also serves as a reflection on awareness and trust. It encourages the audience to pay attention to subtle signs in relationships, to listen to their instincts, and to remember that emotional manipulation can sometimes hide behind the mask of charm. It's not about pointing fingers or claiming truth. It's about understanding that every relationship has layers, and what appears on the surface is rarely the full story. In the end, the story leaves the audience with a lingering thought. The people we admire most are not always as simple or straightforward as they seem. Sometimes, the truth is darker, more complex, and far more human than we ever imagine. And while the story is entirely fictional, it feels real enough to make us question appearances, trust our instincts, and look beyond the mask of charm and fame. This narrative is a reminder that even the most charismatic and successful people are human, and humans are complicated. Sometimes, the people we admire, the ones who make us laugh, inspire us, or entertain us, can have hidden sides that challenge our perception of them. What appears as love, attention, or care can sometimes be intertwined with subtle control, jealousy, or manipulation. Recognizing this doesn't mean we condemn anyone. Rather, it encourages awareness and reflection. The story also highlights a universal lesson about relationships and human behavior. Small red flags, if ignored, can grow into patterns that are hard to escape. Emotional manipulation rarely starts as something obvious. It begins with tiny, almost unnoticeable behaviors that accumulate over time. By paying attention to these signs, trusting our instincts, and understanding the difference between affection and control, we can protect ourselves and better understand the people around us. Finally, this fictional story leaves us with a thought to carry forward. Reality is often more layered than it seems. Charm, fame, and public admiration can hide complexity and sometimes even darker truths behind a smile. While this tale is entirely fictional, it feels believable because it reflects patterns that can exist in real life. It reminds us to look beyond appearances, question what we assume about others, and acknowledge that no one is ever entirely as they seem. In the end, the story isn't about condemning a person. It's about understanding human nature, learning to recognize patterns, and reflecting on the hidden complexities in relationships. The world is full of people who appear perfect on the outside, but as this story shows, there can always be layers beneath the surface that are unseen, misunderstood, or overlooked. And that tension, the space between what we see and what really exists, is what makes human relationships so fascinating and sometimes so haunting.